America wasn't built on good ideas alone. It was built on laws, some brilliant, some terrifying, some so powerful they ripped the country apart and put it back together in a completely different shape. These aren't laws about fake mustaches or ice cream. These are the laws that decided who could vote, who could own property, who lived and who died. I'm talking about 50 laws that genuinely changed the course of American history. And some of them are still affecting your life right now. 95% of you aren't subscribed. Fix that right now. And comment which law you think had the biggest impact. Here's what most people don't understand. Every major shift in American society started with a law. Civil rights, women's equality, worker protections, privacy, freedom of speech. None of it just happened naturally. People fought, people died, and eventually someone wrote it into law. But here's the dark side. For every law that expanded freedom, there's another that took it away. Laws that destroyed communities, laws that legalized discrimination, laws that enriched the powerful and crushed the poor. So this isn't just a history lesson. This is the story of how America became what it is today. Let's start with number 50. Law 50. The Homestead Act of 1862. Abraham Lincoln signed this during the Civil War. It gave 160 acres of free land to anyone willing to farm it for 5 years. Sounds generous. But here's what really happened. This law displaced thousands of Native Americans. It accelerated Western expansion. It created the American middle class and the idea that anyone could own land. Over 270 million acres were claimed. That's 10% of all US land. Entire states were populated because of this law. Montana, North Dakota, Colorado. This law physically shaped the map of America. Law 49. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. First law to ban an entire ethnic group from entering America. Chinese immigrants had built the Transcontinental Railroad. They'd done the most dangerous work for the lowest pay. And America thanked them by making it illegal for more Chinese people to come here. This law stayed in effect for 61 years. It set the precedent for racial immigration quotas that lasted until 1965. It proved that America could legally discriminate based on race alone. Law 48, the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. This law was supposed to break up monopolies, and it did eventually. But first it was used to destroy labor unions. Courts ruled that unions were conspiracies in restraint of trade. Workers trying to negotiate for better wages were arrested under this law. It took decades before it was actually used against big corporations like Standard Oil and AT&T. This law defined the relationship between business and government for over a century. Law 47, Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896. Not technically a law, but a Supreme Court decision that had the force of law, separate but equal. That's what they called it. This ruling made segregation legal across America. Schools, bathrooms, water fountains, restaurants. For 58 years, this decision justified racism at every level of society. It wouldn't be overturned until Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. An entire generation grew up under state-sponsored segregation because of this. Law 46, the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. Before this law, companies could put anything in food and medicine. Cocaine in cough syrup, heroin for headaches, rat poison in canned meat. There were no labels, no regulations, nothing. Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle exposing the meatpacking industry, and America lost its mind. This law created the FDA. It gave the government power to inspect food and drugs. It's why you can trust that your medicine won't kill you. Mostly. Law 45, the 16th Amendment, 1913 federal income tax. Before this, the government had no constitutional right to tax your income. They tried it during the Civil War, but it was temporary. This amendment made it permanent. It completely changed how America funds itself. Want to know why the government can afford wars, social programs, and infrastructure? This law. It shifted power from states to the federal government forever. Law 44. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913. This created the central banking system. Before this, America had constant financial panics. Banks would collapse. People would lose everything overnight. The Federal Reserve was supposed to stabilize the economy. And it did. Sort of. It also gave a small group of people control over the entire money supply. Every recession, every boom, every interest rate change comes from this law. Your mortgage rate, your savings account, all controlled by a system created in 1913. Law. 43. The 17th Amendment, 1913. Before this, senators were chosen by state legislatures. Regular people didn't vote for them. This amendment gave that power to voters. It sounds democratic, but it also weakened state governments and strengthened the federal government. Senators used to represent their state's interests. Now they represent whoever funds their campaigns. This law fundamentally changed the balance of power in America. Law. 42. The Harrison Narcotics Tax Act of 1914. This was America's first major drug law. It didn't ban drugs, it taxed them. But the tax system was designed to make drugs impossible to legally obtain. This law turned doctors and pharmacists into criminals overnight. It created the illegal drug trade. Before this, you could buy morphine at the corner store. After this, drug users became criminals. This law started the war on drugs, 60 years before Nixon made it official. Law 41. The Espionage Act of 1917, passed during World War I to stop spies. Sounds reasonable, but it was used to jail anyone who criticized the government. Socialists, pacifists, journalists. If you spoke out against the war, you could get 20 years in prison. Over 2,000 people were prosecuted. This law is still on the books. It's what they used against Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. One of the most dangerous laws ever passed because it criminalizes speech. Law 40. The 18th Amendment, 1919 Prohibition. The only constitutional amendment ever repealed. This banned alcohol across America. Sounds simple, but it created organized crime as we know it. Al Capone, the mafia, bootlegging, speakeasies. Murder rates skyrocketed. Respect for law enforcement collapsed. The government poisoned industrial alcohol to deter drinkers and killed thousands of people. This failed experiment proved that you can't legislate morality. It was repealed in 1933, but the damage was done. Law 39, the 19th Amendment, 1920. Women got the right to vote, only took 144 years after the Declaration of Independence. Before this, women were legal dependents. They couldn't own property in many states, couldn't serve on juries, couldn't hold office. This amendment didn't just give women the vote, it began the slow process of legal equality. And it doubled the electorate overnight. Every election since 1920 has been shaped by this law. Law 38, the Immigration Act of 1924. This set strict quotas based on national origin. It essentially banned immigration from Asia and severely limited immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. The goal was to keep America white, and it worked. Immigration dropped by 80%. This law stayed in effect until 1965. It shaped the demographic makeup of America for 40 years. Entire communities that could have existed never formed because of this law. Law 37. The Social Security Act of 1935, created during the Great Depression. Before this, old people just worked until they died, or relied on family. There was no safety net. This law created the retirement system we know today. It also created unemployment insurance and welfare. It fundamentally changed the relationship between citizens and government. The government became responsible for taking care of people. Conservative or liberal, this law affects everyone. It's one of the most popular and most expensive programs in American history. Law 36. The National Labor Relations Act of 1935, also called the Wagner Act. This gave workers the legal right to unionize. Before this, companies could fire you for even talking about unions. They could hire thugs to beat up organizers. This law made that illegal. It created the National Labor Relations Board to protect workers. Union membership exploded, wages went up, working conditions improved, the 40-hour work week, overtime pay, workplace safety, all of it came from the union movement that this law protected. Law 35, The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. This created the minimum wage, $0.25 an hour. It also banned child labor and established the 40-hour work week. Before this, children as young as 5 worked in factories. People worked 80-hour weeks with no overtime. This law set the baseline for worker protections. Yes, the minimum wage is too low now. But without this law, there wouldn't be a minimum at all. Law 34. The Selective Training and Service Act of 1940. First peacetime draft in American history. This law gave the government the power to force you into military service even when there's no war. Over 10 million men were drafted during World War II. The draft continued through Korea and Vietnam. It didn't end until 1973. But the law is still there. Every male citizen still has to register at 18. This law established that the government owns your body in times of crisis. Law 33. Executive Order 9066, 1942. Franklin Roosevelt signed this. It authorized the military to relocate Japanese Americans to internment camps. Over 120,000 people. 2/3 were American citizens. They lost their homes, their businesses, their freedom for years just because of their ethnicity. No charges, no trials. Just camps surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. This wasn't a law passed by Congress, it was an executive order. One man's signature. It proved that constitutional rights can disappear overnight. Law 32. The GI Bill of 1944. Officially, the Service Members Readjustment Act. This paid for veterans to go to college. It gave them low-interest home loans. It created the American middle class. Millions of veterans got educated. They bought houses. They started businesses. But here's the dark side. Black veterans were systematically denied these benefits. Banks wouldn't give them loans. Colleges wouldn't admit them. The GI Bill built white suburban America and left black veterans behind. The wealth gap we see today started here. Law 31. The Taft-Hartley Act of 1947. This weakened unions. It banned certain types of strikes. It allowed states to pass right-to-work laws that undermine union funding. Union leaders had to sign affidavits saying they weren't communists. This law was passed over President Truman's veto. It's why union membership has been declining for 75 years. The power that workers gained in the 1930s started eroding with this law. Law 30, the National Security Act of 1947. This created the CIA, it created the Department of Defense, it created the National Security Council. Before this, America didn't have a permanent intelligence agency or a unified military command. This law built the infrastructure for America's role as a global superpower. Every covert operation, every foreign intervention, every drone strike, all of it traces back to the powers created by this law. Law 29, Executive Order 9981, 1948. Harry Truman desegregated the military. The armed forces had been segregated since the Revolutionary War. Black soldiers fought in separate units, ate in separate mess halls, died for a country that treated them as second-class citizens. This order ended that. It was one of the first major victories of the civil rights movement. And it proved that integration could work. The military became one of the most racially integrated institutions in America. Law 28, the Housing Act of 1949. This authorized federal funding for urban renewal. Sounds good. But here's what it really did. It gave local governments the power to declare neighborhoods blighted and tear them down. Thousands of thriving black and immigrant communities were destroyed. They called it slum clearance, but the people who lived there called it something else. Negro removal. Entire neighborhoods vanished, replaced by highways and public housing projects. This law reshaped American cities and destroyed generational wealth in minority communities. Law 27. Brown v. Board of Education. 1954 Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal was unconstitutional. This overturned Plessy v. Ferguson. School segregation was now illegal. But here's the reality. Many schools didn't integrate for another 20 years. Some closed rather than integrate. White families fled to the suburbs. But this decision was the legal foundation for the entire civil rights movement. It proved that segregation could be challenged and defeated. Law 26, the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. Eisenhower signed this. It built 41,000 miles of highway across America. Changed everything. How we travel, where we live, how cities are designed. But highways were deliberately routed through black neighborhoods. It destroyed communities. It created suburban sprawl. It made America dependent on cars. It shaped the geography of modern America more than any other single law. Law 25, the Civil Rights Act of 1957. First civil rights law since Reconstruction. It was weak. It created the Civil Rights Commission but didn't have much enforcement power. But it mattered because it showed that Congress could pass civil rights legislation. It set the stage for the stronger laws that came later. It proved that change was possible. Law 24, the National Defense Education Act of 1958, passed after the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. America panicked. We were losing the space race. This law poured billions into education, especially science and math. It funded college loans. It improved schools. It's why America eventually won the space race. It's why we have Silicon Valley. This law treated education as a national security issue and transformed American schools. Law 23, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, 1964. This gave President Johnson the power to use military force in Vietnam without declaring war. It was based on a naval incident that probably never happened the way it was reported. This resolution led to the Vietnam War. Over 58,000 American soldiers died. Millions of Vietnamese died. It set the precedent that presidents don't need Congress to start wars. Every military action since then, from Iraq to Afghanistan, traces back to this expansion of executive power. Law 22, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the big one. This banned discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It ended legal segregation. It forced businesses and schools to integrate. It gave the federal government power to enforce civil rights. This law fundamentally changed America. It didn't end racism, but it ended legal racism. Everything from who can eat at a restaurant to who can get hired is governed by this law. Law 21, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This banned literacy tests and poll taxes. It gave the federal government power to oversee elections in states with a history of discrimination. Black voter registration in the South skyrocketed. In Mississippi, it went from 7% to 60% in 4 years. This law made democracy real for millions of Americans. Parts of it were struck down by the Supreme Court in 2013, and voter suppression immediately increased. Law 20, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. This ended the racist quota system from 1924. It opened immigration from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Before this, America was overwhelmingly white and European. After this, America became the diverse country it is today. This law changed the face of America. Literally, look around. The diversity you see is because of this law. Law 19, the Freedom of Information Act of 1966. This gave citizens the right to access government documents. Before this, the government could hide whatever it wanted. This law forced transparency. Journalists use it. Activists use it. Regular citizens use it. It's how we learned about government surveillance, secret wars, and corporate corruption. This law made it harder for the government to lie. Law 18, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967. Before this, companies could refuse to hire anyone over 40. Job ads literally said, no one over 35. This law made age discrimination illegal. It protected older workers. It changed retirement. People could work longer if they wanted. This law extended careers and protected millions from being thrown away because of their age. Law 17, the Fair Housing Act of 1968. Passed 1 week after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. This banned discrimination in housing. Before this, landlords could refuse to rent to you because of your race. Banks could deny you a mortgage. Neighborhoods could have racial covenants. This law made it illegal, but redlining and housing discrimination continued for decades anyway. Still, this law established that housing is a civil right. Law 16, the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970. This created the EPA. Before this, companies could dump whatever they wanted into rivers and air. There were no environmental reviews, no regulations. Rivers caught on fire. Smog-choked cities. This law gave the government power to protect the environment. It's why the air is breathable and the water is mostly drinkable. It's also why companies spend millions lobbying to weaken it. Law 15, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. This created OSHA. Before this, workplace safety was optional. Thousands died every year in preventable accidents. This law forced companies to maintain safe working conditions. Hard hats, safety equipment, proper training. Workplace deaths dropped dramatically. This law decided that profit isn't worth more than human lives. Law 14, Title 9, 1972. No person shall be excluded from any education program receiving federal funding based on sex. That's it. That one sentence. It forced schools to invest in women's sports. It reduced sexual harassment. It opened doors that had been closed to women for centuries. College enrollment for women exploded. Women's sports became viable. This law proved that equality requires enforcement, not just good intentions. Law 13, Roe v. Wade, 1973. Supreme Court ruled that women have a constitutional right to abortion. For 49 years, this was the law. It didn't make abortion mandatory. It made it legal and safe. Before this, women died from illegal abortions. After this, they didn't. Then in 2022, the Supreme Court overturned it. Now abortion laws vary by state. This decision and its reversal show how fragile rights can be. Law 12, the War Powers Resolution of 1973. This tried to limit presidential war powers after Vietnam. It requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of military action and limits operations to 60 days without congressional approval. But every president since has ignored it. It's technically a law, but has no real enforcement. It shows that laws are only as strong as people's willingness to uphold them. Law 11, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. ERISA. This regulated pension plans and created 401ks. Before this, companies could promise pensions and then not pay them. Workers would retire with nothing. This law set minimum standards. It required funding. It created the retirement system we have now. For better or worse, this law shifted retirement from guaranteed pensions to self-managed 401ks. Law 10, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978. Before this, companies could fire women for being pregnant, could refuse to hire them, could deny them health insurance. This law made pregnancy discrimination illegal. It forced employers to treat pregnancy like any other temporary condition. It allowed women to have careers and families. Simple concept. Took until 1978 to become law. Law 9, the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978. This removed government control over airline routes and prices. Before this, the government set all airfares. Flying was expensive and rare. After this, airlines competed. Prices dropped. More people flew. But it also led to worse service, packed planes, and airline bankruptcies. This law made flying accessible but uncomfortable. It started the deregulation wave that continued through the 1980s. Law 8, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. This banned discrimination against disabled people. It required ramps, elevators, accessible bathrooms, wider doorways. Before this, disabled people were shut out of public life. Buildings were inaccessible. Jobs were denied. This law forced America to accommodate everyone. Those ramps and automatic doors you see everywhere, they exist because of this law. Law 7, the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. This guaranteed 12 weeks of unpaid leave for family or medical emergencies. Before this, companies could fire you for taking time off to care for a sick child or parent. It's not paid leave. America still doesn't have that. But it's something. It protects your job while you deal with life. Most developed countries have stronger protections, but this was a start. Law 6. The Defense of Marriage Act of 1996 DOMA. This defined marriage as between one man and one woman. It allowed states to refuse to recognize same-sex marriages. For 17 years, this was federal law. It denied gay couples hundreds of federal benefits. Then in 2013, the Supreme Court struck it down. And in 2015, same-sex marriage became legal nationwide. This law's existence and eventual defeat shows how quickly social norms can change. Law 5. The Patriot Act of 2001 passed 45 days after 9/11. Nobody read it. It was over 300 pages, but Congress passed it anyway. This law expanded government surveillance massively. It allowed warrantless wiretaps. It let the FBI access your records without a warrant. It created the legal framework for mass surveillance. Edward Snowden revealed the extent years later. This law traded liberty for security and gave the government powers it still has today. Law 4. The Affordable Care Act of 2010, Obamacare. Love it or hate it, it changed healthcare. It banned denying coverage for pre-existing conditions. It let kids stay on parents' insurance until 26. It expanded Medicaid. It required everyone to have insurance. Millions gained coverage. Costs are still too high. But this law established that healthcare is something the government should help provide. It's been attacked constantly, but it's still here. Law 3, Citizens United vs. FEC, 2010. Supreme Court ruled that corporations can spend unlimited money on political campaigns. Money is speech. Corporations are people. That's what they decided. After this, political spending exploded. Super PACs, dark money, billionaires buying elections. This decision fundamentally changed American democracy. It's why campaigns cost billions now. It's why regular people feel like their vote doesn't matter. Law 2. The Dodd-Frank Act of 2010 passed after the 2008 financial crisis. This regulated banks to prevent another collapse. It created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It limited risky trading. It tried to prevent too big to fail. Banks hated it. They've spent billions trying to weaken it. Parts have been rolled back. But this law at least tried to hold Wall Street accountable after they crashed the economy. Law 1. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The most recent law on this list. This cut corporate tax rates from 35% to 21%. It changed individual tax brackets. It doubled the standard deduction. It capped state and local tax deductions. Companies got permanent cuts. Individuals got temporary ones. The deficit exploded. This law redistributed wealth upward and added trillions to the national debt. Time will tell its full impact, but it fundamentally restructured American taxation. So here's what all of this means. These 50 laws show you how power really works in America. Not through ideas, not through speeches, through legislation. Some of these laws expanded freedom, some destroyed it, some built wealth, some redistributed it, some protected people, some killed them. And here's the scariest part. New laws are being written right now. Laws about AI, laws about privacy, laws about speech, laws that will shape the next 100 years. And most people have no idea what's in them. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The same patterns keep showing up. Power consolidates. People fight back. Laws change. Then the cycle starts again. These 50 laws built modern America. The good, the bad, and the ugly. From laws that gave people rights to laws that took them away. From laws that started wars to laws that ended them. Every single one of these changed the trajectory of the country. Some you benefit from, some you're still fighting against. But they all matter, because laws aren't just words on paper. They're the rules that decide who has power and who doesn't. And that's the most American thing there is. Subscribe if this opened your eyes to something new.